Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to this version 2.18 live stream. So we will first talk about a few changes we made to the release cycle of PopcornFX versions. Then some updates on the Unity plugin side. We also released a bunch of new video tutorials, and we'll show you a live demo with the new features of version 2.18. So I'll let you go present you the first few things.
Yes, so just to give an update on the versions that we have currently and the future versions. So as previously mentioned, the long-term support version is still 2.15. The next patch will be coming out next week, so the 14th one, and we will continue to fix any additional issues as mentioned. At the same time, next week, we will release the last expected patch, at least for 2.17, so 2.70.5. If there are critical issues, we will fix them, but we plan it to be the last patch, basically. Today is 2.18, and so obviously, and the next version, so this is what is changing. 2.19 will be at GDC 24. So this gives us a good amount of time between now and then to develop. But starting from 2.19, instead of releasing a new minor version every 3 months, we will do so every 4 months. So that means basically a new version, 3 versions per year, basically.
Yeah, so for the GDC 24 version, this will be an unusually long time to wait. It's actually around 6 months. We decided to do that to synchronize the new release schedule on GDC because we want to have to release every year a new version at GDC. So we would have had with the previous schedule to release a version in January, but then it would have been super short for GDC. So we preferred to have a big wait for 2.19, and we have a lot of things we want to do in 2.19 and to present at GDC. So hopefully this will be a good version.
So yeah, that's all for the versions update. On the Unity plugin, so after some thoughts, basically our current position in terms of development efforts for the community plugin and community license of the plugin is to mainly focus our efforts on the PC and mobile platforms, including VR and Switch, and mainly on URP render pipeline, because we want to reduce the amount of permutations of features we have to support. Some of them are not necessarily not used that much. I mean, so yeah, our main focus for the coming versions will be URP and PC, mobile, and VR for the community license. It does not mean that we will stop maintaining or doing actual development on HGRP or legacy. But if we do so, it will be more in like we might already be with some studios in a close relationship, like with custom support plan and stuff like that. But for general development, yeah, that's our take for the future months. So it's not definitive, but it will affect our efforts for the next 6 months at the very least. So if you have any question about that, we can give more info on Discord. We can chat about it on Discord. So feel free if you have any questions. Yeah, so 3 new video tutorials for the Unreal, Unity, and After Effects plugin. They are just basic entry videos for how to set up the plugin, how to import an effect, and how to place the effect in the level. That's all. But for newcomers, it was long due. For all of the plugins, we only had the PopcornFX v1 documentation videos, I mean tutorials. So we'll post the links on Discord today. I think they already are online. Yeah, we'll not go over these in the demo, but we did some efforts on 2.18 on the optimizer, so graph optimizer. you can look at the changelog. Yeah, you can expect some decent improvements from this. Yeah, just going to check if we have any major audio issue. No, seems okay. Yeah, so the first feature I will show is a new addition to the ribbon renderer node that was asked for some time now. So we have finally the tube billboarding mode. So here is an effect that is a new effect from the samples package. You will be able to download it tonight. Basically, instead of connecting particles with the quads as you are used to, on the ribbon renderer node, you can now specify side align tube or multiplane, as I will show a bit after. And if you have a tube billboarding mode selected, you can specify the amount of segments. So right now it's 8 segments. You can see that if I reduce it to like 3, it's very low. It can go up to 16. It's important to note that the more segments, the more costly it is, obviously. So we have it both implemented on the CPU for engine integrators. You will know what I'm talking about. It's implemented both on the CPU billboarding side and the GPU billboarding side in the Vertex shader. So it works for CPU or GPU particles. But yeah, more segments mean more costly rendering. This effect also shows an interesting feature. So if I move a bit the LOD slider, so you can see this part of the graph here. It's disabling, not disabling, but hiding some of the particles along the segment as I'm changing the LOD. So you can combine built-in custom logic like that with, let's say, several renderer node if you want to do LODing of the amount of segments and on the amount of particles being drawn. Yeah, if you want to. Yeah. So this example is like plane of tentacles, but you could imagine it being like the LOD0 version of a grass plane, where if you go far away, it falls back to classic instance meshes being displaced in the vertex shader. So yeah, that's the first new billboarding mode. And the other one that we added is multi-plane ribbons. You can basically specify a number of segments. So it's the same between each particle. It will connect with the multiple plane instead of just a 2D plane, and you can specify the amount of planes here. So I don't know if it's very clear on the stream, but yeah, from 2 to 8. So yeah, an important thing to mention is that we did not implement CPU, or actually we might have implemented parts of the CPU sorter, but basically right now it only works if you have additive tube ribbons or multi-plane ribbons or opaque, basically anything that does not depend on sort, because it would require that we sort each of these quads, and same for the tubes, and we decided not to implement it as a first step. So if you do tentacles, I don't know, hair, grass, this type of effects, it will be okay. If you do alpha blended particles, it will not work correctly. But yeah, if you play with that features, let us know, and if there's any types of effects that need sorting to be implemented, well, we might consider it to be added later on. So yeah, that's all for me. And yeah, we have an example in the tutorials package too that shows the billboarding mode 1. We added the tube and multiplane if you want to look at how it works. That's all for me. I will let Julien.
Right, thanks Hugo. So I'll quickly show you a bunch of new nodes we added in the core library and also built-in nodes. So before 2.18, we had a switch node, rand pick node, and an event rand pick node. In 2.18 we unified the namings because the switch and rand pick were actually the same but named differently. So we renamed the old switch node to pick, and we added a new switch node which now works in reverse. So I'll quickly go through what the old pick node, the old switch node, new pick node does. So you have an input value here named selector, and you can compare that value to a bunch of predefined values and output whatever you want based on the result of these compares. So for example, if the selector is equal to compare value 0, the output of the node will be value 0. If it's equal to compare value 1, it will be value 1, etc. You can change the number of compare values and the things scale accordingly. So it's basically a chain of ifs. Without this node, you would have to use a bunch of ifs. The rand pick node is the same, except it randomly picks between all the input values, and you can change the probability of each value to be picked, and it will output the one it picks, basically. So now the new switch node is the opposite of that. So it has multiple outputs, and each output corresponds to a compare value that the input selector is compared against, and only one of those outputs will be true. So it will compare the selector. If it's equal to compare value 0, the case 0 output will be true, the others will be false. If it's equal to compare value 1, the case 1 output will be true, the others will be false, etc. Same thing, you can increase the number of compares. And this, without this built-in node, you would have to do a bunch of select statements, basically. And this is useful, for example, if you have multiple renderers and you want to have an attribute between, I don't know, let's say 0 and 10, and you have 10 renderers, and based on the value of this attribute, you want only one renderer to be active. So you can use the switch node, wire each of the bool outputs to the enabled pin of each renderer, and it will work. And same thing for the rand switch. You set the probability of each output to be true, and one of them will be true based on that probability. And for the old event rand pick, we just renamed it to event rand switch to be consistent with the new namings of the other switch nodes. But it works exactly the same as before. So here we have an input event, and based on the probabilities of each output, it will route the input event to one of these outputs. Then we added also a ticker node. So this is a timer, basically. You specify a delay. So here by default, it's 1 second. So this means that every 1 second, the has ticked output will be true for 1 frame. So it allows you to trigger custom logic every specific amount of seconds. So if I put 0.5, every 0.5 seconds, the has ticked will be true, and you will be able to do something based on that. We also added the store if node. So this is a helper around discretization. So based on the value of the do store input, it will record or not the value of new value. So for example, if I have a collision node, and if I expose the has collided output, so every time a collision occurs, has collided will be true. So I can use that to do the store. And if I wire in, for example, the position and take the output value, now this output value will be the position of the last collision, because on the frame where a collision occurred, this node will store the value of the position at that frame. And every subsequent frame, if there are no collisions, it will just skip the last position of the last collision. So it's a pretty neat node You can use it in combination with ticker to store a value every, let's say, every 1 or 2 seconds or whatever. Also, the delay input of the ticker node doesn't have to be a constant, so you can evaluate any custom logic through that.
Just to be clear, the has collided output of the collision node is not discretized. It's like true for one frame.
Yes, it's true for one frame. So anything that is true for one frame.
This node is very useful for this case.
Yeah. Everything that is true for one frame, you can wire into the store. If you wire something that is true for many frames, the store if will just store every frame where this value is true. So it's kind of less interesting. On a more advanced topic, we added a new bunch of SimWave functions. So I won't go into a lot of detail here. This basically allows you to introspect the simulation and the way that the simulation breaks the particles into subsets. So this is similar to the wavefronts or warps on the GPU, except it also works in the CPU simulation in Popcorn. But yeah, the wave size will give you the size of the current wavefront. Wave.at will allow you to access the value of a specific particle in the current wavefront. So this is useful mainly for LOD to reduce the amount of computations done in a graph when you don't need it to be per particle, but you can afford to be let's say every 64 particles on GPU or something like that. Anyway, you can also do that inside scripts. On the UI side, we also improved a few small things. So before 2.18, you had the space frame view, which could be kind of confusing. This was supposed to show you world space and local space values. Now we added that to the tooltip, so I don't know if it will be very visible in the stream. Here, if I hover the position wire that goes out of the local position to world node, it will tell me next to the float 3, it will tell me that it's a world space value. If I hover it before that, it will tell me it's a local space value. Same for the axis wired into the ribbon renderer. Here, it tells me it's a world space value. So it doesn't always know which space it's in. For example, if I take this here, this vector, it doesn't know, so it doesn't say. But it can be useful to make sure in more complex graphs, is this value world space or not?
Does it work on pins or on wires?
Yes.
Okay.
I had to try. But, also on the undo stack, so if I do a bunch of random changes, whatever. So in the undo stack, now you can see the point of the last save. So if I go back here and hit Control S, you will have the little save icon that moved here. This allows you to very quickly see where in the undo stack is the last saved version of the asset on disk. And something else in the template tree view. So if I open a big, let me open the physics instead. So if you have an effect with a lot of templates, in the template tree view, we added a visualization for the templates that are public or local to the file. Before, you had to select the template, see if the public checkbox was checked. So here is checked, here is not checked. So we simply change the coloration. So now all the public templates will be colored slightly green. It allows you to quickly see what's public, what's not. So small UI feature. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh yes, my bad, I forgot one thing. So in some projects that override don't use the editor default materials and that use their own materials. We added the ability to completely disable the editor default materials. So here in the project settings, features, if you scroll down under materials, you have an enable default materials checkbox. So if you have your own PKRI and don't want to see the editor materials, you just uncheck this. And then when you drop a new renderer, shouldn't do it in this. So yeah, when you drop a new renderer, let's say a new billboard, if you try to pick a new material here, it will not show the editor default material. So here in this project, I don't have any custom material, so the list is empty. But if you had a custom material, it will appear here without the editor materials. So yep, that's basically it. 2.18 is a pretty light release. We've been working on other things and preparing 2.19, but still a few nice features. So if there are any questions, we'd be happy to answer. And otherwise, as usual, you can hop in the Discord. The link is in the description, and ask any question you'd like. So, yep, if there are no questions, we'll
Wrap it up.
We'll wrap it up.
Okay.
Thanks for joining, and yep, see you on the Discord.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.